let me introduce you because I'm quite excited that
Yep.
you're on here because it's not too often that someone who spoke to Durham is now on the show. So that's great. It just worked out really well. So
Yeah,
Drew
it was good timing.
Knox, father of three, avid golfer. I like that you mentioned avid golfer. Canadian realtor investor for 13 years, multi-cannabis shop owner, and US Mexico Airbnb arbitrage operator with six-figure cash flow properties operating in three states and two countries. Very impressed. I'm very impressed with that. I think that's awesome. So
Thank you.
how did you tell us how you get started on this? Because this is quite amazing.
Yeah. How I got started was I kind of stumbled across it. It wasn't something I was seeking out. I was down in Florida visiting family in the Clearwater, Dunedin area, and started looking into a property. With three small kids, and my wife and I, we're a pretty big load. And when we show up there to my parents' two-bedroom condo, it got pretty tight pretty quick. So we were looking for a house for ourselves to come and use, and then stay in. And then when we weren't there, obviously, short-term rental Airbnb it out
Mhm.
was kind of my plan. And I wasn't familiar with the Florida market. So once I got into looking to it, for some reason, I don't know why, I thought the houses were going to be cheaper. I thought I was going to be picking up steals for
Maybe
50 to
back in
$100,000.
2008.
Right, I'm a little late to the party, so I realized that quickly. I realized they were 300 to 500 price
Wow.
range. So like I mentioned yesterday, you still had to come up with six-figure down payments. I had to qualify for financing. As a self-employed individual, can be challenging at times, especially
Mhm.
in a foreign country, and then just navigating the foreign market. So that's kind of how I got into just even looking into Airbnb and checking out things on the US side. And then I just probably through the internet and social media, not quite sure how I stumbled across the business model. I'm not the person who's invented it, obviously. And I just simply started digging into the Airbnb arbitrage model a bit more. And then once I looked into it and kind of understood it, I was very intrigued, and then started going down that road.
So how did you find, because clearly, for those who may not know, how would you describe Airbnb arbitrage?
Yeah, Airbnb arbitrage is very simply leasing out a property that someone else owns
Yep.
with their knowledge and consent, obviously. You then relist it on short term rental platforms like VRBO, Booking.com,
Mhm.
and Airbnb.
Now,
So
now,
basically,
why would a landlord or an investor even think of entertaining this idea?
yeah, that was a very big question. And my first one that I kind of came across, obviously, like, why would anybody allow you to run a business out of their house? But there are some good reasons. One, low tenant turnover. So
Yep.
my company, we would be signing a minimum 2-year lease is ideally what we look for, but we'll do 3-year leases as well. So once we find a property that's working and it's making some money, ideally we don't want to go anywhere. So a lot of times turnover, as we know, as investors, costs money. Every time you're switching tenants in and out, you got vacancies and all that kind of stuff. So we
Mhm.
kind of help solve some of that problem. Also, taking care of the property. So we tend the deal I kind of worked out. I kind of just made this one up myself. Obviously, people have different ranges, but I cover anything under $200 with owners. So any small repairs, light
No,
bulbs,
that's
leaky
favorable. Yeah.
toilets. Yeah, so it's just small things they don't have to worry about. I don't bring it to them. We just go ahead and fix it. So we keep the property in sale ready kind of condition, right? We'll paint the walls if we have to. Whereas a typical tenant, a lot of times when they leave, you've got long list of repairs that you got to kind of get the property ready again and fix up. So we kind of we take care of that. So that's a kind of a big upside that
Mhm.
they don't have to worry about the damage of the property.
You mentioned that it's also through an LLC or a company. So when
Correct.
you rent these places, you're showing from a company perspective that you're renting. It's not just you as an individual. Can you elaborate on that?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So I tend to I some people were a little bit weary of signing leases with companies at first if you're talking directly to landlords. But once you explain it to them and they look into your company, found they've all been very receptive. So I signed the leases under my company's name. And the property management companies that we work with, they're all very much on board with it because they kind of understand it. So
Nice. And how do you choose location? Because I mean, US is huge, massive. So where do you choose? Like, what city do you say this is going to work? This is not going to work? And if it's a 2 year commitment, is there a grace period where you try things out and you go, this may not work, and you move on, or how does that work?
So, like any real estate investing, you got to do your market research.
Yeah.
So you can kind of see there are towns that are heavy Airbnb towns. They're popular in the Airbnb market. You can look at the amount of listings that are on Airbnb in any given city, so that'll obviously indicate. Regulations is something you really need to pay attention to. Obviously, New York recently had some really strict regulations where they shut down a lot of their Airbnbs.
Okay.
Toronto, Canada, we obviously have the similar kind of situation where they
Yeah.
where they regulated it a bit. So so the theory in my mind at first was, hey, go to the places with no regulations. Now I'm not there. There was a different school of thought on that. That what you have to be careful of there is if you go into a town and there's no regulations, and then they bring regulations in, and now you're
Mm.
upside down really quickly. But if you go into a city where they already have some regulations and they're manageable regulations, that's almost there's an attraction there, right? That if you just come and play by the rules, register your property correctly, then you don't have to worry about them coming pulling the rug out from under you.
And what rules are we talking about? Like what
So what a lot of the times they'll do is they will kind of force you to do what's called midterm rentals. So they won't let you do a lease for less than 30 days. So that's kind of how they put these rules and regulations in place. Is they say you can't rent, and they'll actually use the platform. So Airbnb to or Expedia, for example. I tried to list one of the properties in Dallas, and I don't have it registered. And then they wouldn't let me list it on their platform for less
so
than
if
30
you were to
days.
rent it, it'd be at minimum 30 days rather than like 5 days or so.
Correct. Yeah. So that is also, if you do find yourself in a tough position or they do change the rules on you, that is a strategy you can switch gears to and go to midterm rentals. Traveling nurses and a lot of people like that do look for 30-day plus rentals. But ideally, we're trying to do less than that, trying to do the inside 30 days.
What's the ideal day? Is it 2 days, 5 days? What's the most?
So the longer, if you can get for example, if you can get a week stay, ideally you're paying the cleaner less often to go,
Yeah.
right? So we don't do less than 2 days. I try to stay away from it because of parties and that kind of thing. So one night stays we try not to do, but a real sweet spot is you can get a 1 to 3 week booking. I mean, I only have to the fee for the cleaner is booked is built into their fee that they pay, but ideally the less often you have to have the cleaner go out, the better
Better
it
off
is.
it is.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
what's typical? Who typically rents at these places?
So actually, it's very interesting. It depends on where you have your units. So, for example, the ones I have in Mexico, very travel vacation
Hmm.
oriented. My properties I have in Nebraska, for example, they kind of run the gamut. We've had people there for funerals, visiting family, working. We have people because they have a lot of development going on in the area. They got a meta
Okay.
data center, so they have contract workers come in. So yeah, and then the odd people there just vacationing. Omaha, for example, has one of the best zoos in the U.S. So you do have some vacation places, but and the same with when you go to Florida, you'll have a ton of vacation kind of property. So it really does depend on where your property is, but it really can run the gamut.
Well, you said there's some in Mexico. Where about in Mexico? That sounds fascinating. And Nebraska, like how did you Omaha, Nebraska? Like I know one individual there, but why? This seems like a strange
Yeah.
place to start off.
Yeah, it was a strange place to start off, to be honest with you. And what it was is I tend to be I get into things maybe before I probably should analyze things a bit more, but I
That's
tend to just
that's
take
perfectly
action.
fine.
Yeah, I tend to just take action and figure it out. And what I was trying to
Cool.
do at first, so my Omaha properties were some of my first ones, and
Yep.
they were because I was just looking for anybody who would let me do this,
Yep.
right? What owner would agree to this, right? And the first guy who did it in a half decent house that was about 6-year-old house, I think the first one was, and he was on board was in Omaha, Nebraska, and it was a house that I was like, I would rent this. And Omaha, Nebraska, I did some research on it, and it's a population of over 500,000. It was the biggest city in Nebraska, and
Mm.
there are some Fortune 500 companies in there, but it's just not a big travel destination, which is probably where, if I were suggesting to anybody else, do your market research, get, because you want that people pay a premium when they're traveling, right, for
Yeah.
vacation stuff. Whereas somebody who's working, if they're kind of looking for the best bang for their buck, because obviously they're there to work, opposed to someone who's taking their family out for leisure. So ideally, you want to tap into the travel markets. But I landed there because it was just somebody who would let me do it in a good, decent house and in a reasonably large city.
Yeah.
So I just
So
jumped
how
in.
do the conversations usually go? I know you mentioned that you utilize VAs a lot to
Yep.
find these places, but what are the typical conversation goes on with these landlords or property management companies?
Yeah. A lot of the property management companies, they typically kind of know of the strategy or are aware of it. The landlord one, you're just kind of explaining them. A lot of people don't necessarily know what the model is, so you're just
Mhm.
explaining what Airbnb arbitrage is. But that's basically it. You're educating them a bit at first, and obviously highlighting the benefits of why we would be beneficial to them. And then obviously, depending on how much you like the property, you can overpay in rent, which is kind of like
Mm.
I try not to do that, try to steer away from that.
Yep.
But it's obviously a big selling point to landlords. So I'm just basically explaining it to them, showing them the highlights, and then seeing if they have any interest in pursuing it any further.
It's a really numbers game.
It's a numbers game. That's all it is at the end of the day. And what I've found is when I get a landlord who has the property as an investment property, they're entrepreneurial minded to a certain degree. And if there's a business opportunity for them to maybe make a couple, because sometimes you can just offer $200 more rent than what they were getting. They were getting 17. I'll give them 19, and then that's a little bit more to his bottom line. And I think a lot of them, what I've found is once I've gotten into the property and they see it working,
Yeah.
then they were referring me. I was getting more referrals or sending me to their buddies down the road because they're going, "Oh, this is great,"
You
and
mentioned
it's
in
yeah.
Nebraska, you've got too many possible units to rent out.
I got more leads than I know what to do with it in Nebraska, right? So because now all their friends are kind of coming to me and trying to bring their properties, right? But I got to be careful where I pick and choose my
Of
units
course,
with.
of course. Also, one thing I was impressed with was the systems and the software or the AI tools that you use in order to operate this with systems and procedures and automation and with a virtual assistant. Can you elaborate on more on that process?
Yeah, yeah. So honestly, it's probably the most exciting. I mean, obviously the cash flow and all that's super exciting, but this to me as a realtor for 14 years,
Mhm.
this was the most exciting part of it was the fact that you can systemize all this stuff. You really can. So you can scale much quicker using all of
Scalability
these.
is very important. Few people even think of
It's
that
huge.
when they start off.
Yeah, it's huge. So I've learned from being my real estate days and realizing I was only so much I could do as one person, and
Mm.
and this AI and the software combined with my virtual assistant, I you can see the vision. You can see that once you get the team in place in the city, and you get your systems in place, and your virtual assistant is trained on those
Yeah.
systems, it's just you can hence why I was able to scale reasonably quickly is because once you get, if I hadn't moved to so many different cities, I probably would have even scaled faster
Yeah.
if I had just stayed in one spot and gone. So I kind of the bonus to where I tried different cities was that it let me test the waters in different markets and kind of see which ones are performing the best, and then kind of focus on there. It obviously cost me some money to do that, but I do think the real magic is in systemizing, using these software programs, and like I said, you can at the beginning it's labor intensive to get these units kind of started up, get them
Mhm.
furnished and staged, but then once you get them going and you get these systems in place, it can really your man hours that it takes to run it really drop down.
I'm big on systems. As an entrepreneur, business owner, it's so important. We overlook it. Can you give us
Absolutely.
an example of some of the systems? I know the VA does a lot of it,
Mm-hmm.
but so booking and then from the booking to the cleaners or to the relationship or discussion with the potential stay. What
Yep.
kind of software is there? You say?
So they're called channel manager softwares, and there's multiple companies. There's Hospitable, Hostaway, Guesty. There's a bunch of them.
Mhm.
If you look them up, and basically those ones to me are the most important piece that you would use in all of these because they kind of all tie into the channel management software. For your guests that don't know, it basically, or your listeners that aren't aware, basically what it is it centralizes all of the bookings from all the different platforms in one spot,
Oh yeah, yeah, yes, yes. Okay.
right? So VRBO, Airbnb, Booking.com. If I get a booking on Booking.com, it blocks the calendar on Airbnb and
Mm,
VRBO. Because if you start getting overlapping bookings and you have to cancel, hurt your ratings,
it's a
they
mess.
cost you money. Yeah, it's not good. You
Mess.
really want to avoid that big time. Some of them will actually almost charge you the amount that
Ooh.
you were supposed to collect. It can be very costly, so you don't want that. And then through this software, it basically has automated messages in it that get sent out at different dates and
Yeah.
times. You can connect your digital door lock to the system, and it
Oh,
will
amazing.
generate new codes for new guests as they come in. It automatically notifies my team members. So my cleaners, they get a notification. It gets put into their calendar that they have a
Yeah.
clean on set date. Automatic welcoming message goes out. My virtual assistant is notified. A rental agreement is actually sent to them, and then the payment is processed
In a matter
at
of
times,
seconds, like we're talking
all
minutes here.
within just instantaneously. I'll get a notification on my phone that says, "Hey, this guy booked for these dates," and then all those other things happen within seconds.
This sounds too good to be true. Any drawbacks? Like it must be. This sounds very like you're investing, but it's also you're into a business called hospitality.
Yeah, yeah.
So any drawbacks with all this?
There's drawbacks in every business.
Yeah.
I would say this one, what probably made me the most uncomfortable is I'm used to owning stuff, right? And owning
Mm,
real estate and being in control of it.
yeah.
So, you're working with a homeowner. So you have to have a good relationship with them and trying to get things done in a timely manner. It can be a little bit of a challenge. Obviously, dealing with high volumes of guests coming and going and keeping everybody happy has its challenges, making sure the cleaners are doing their job.
Mhm.
But the biggest thing for me was the fact that I didn't own anything. So it was almost more of a mental shift than anything else, right? Because you got these 2 year leases, but then after that, what are you left with? Some furniture that's depreciated in value, and what are you
Yeah.
holding on to? You really got a bunch of leases, is what you've got. So, but at the end of the day, if you can recoup your investment in a decent time period, then after that, you don't really have anything to lose after you've recouped your money. I mean, you got some property that or some furniture that may not be worth what it was before, but I mean,
You sell it
you
off.
just
Yeah, you move
yeah,
on. And it's
yep,
also scalable. I
exactly.
like the way you say it's scalable. Can you go into some of the numbers? Because I think that was exciting. I was quite impressed with the numbers you had. Just a ballpark idea of numbers.
So the average property I didn't touch on this yesterday, but I try to shoot for each property making about $1,500 net
Yeah.
positive cash flow. That is what I'm aiming for. And that, so there's high seasons and low seasons in this, and it's very
Mm.
important. And it actually can matter when you pick the units up. So anybody who's listening and wants to get into this, if you can time it going into a high season, right, where you pick up the unit going into a said high season, you grossly improve your recoup time because obviously, for example, my Mexico property, one of them, the property management company that I'm working with down there basically said that in this building, in the high season, I kind of got them at the beginning of the low season in Mexico because I just wanted to get my foot in the door there.
Yep.
But they can go as high as 12K gross, rents $2,500, so you can be bringing in 5-6K net a month in those high seasons. So if you
Mm.
can time it where you pick up a unit going into the winter in Mexico, right? You can have your money back in 4 or 5 months. So that that's a really good scenario. But if I'm shooting for about 1,500 a unit, obviously it changes a little bit. Houses tend to bring you a little bit more, but they're a little more cost heavy to start. Whereas a condo, for example, maybe it makes 1,000, but you start them up for $10,000, so they're a little bit cheaper. But to try to give you some numbers from the ones I spoke about last night, Dallas, for example, the one I just got there, it cost 27,000 to get it all up and running. And there was a bit of you could do it for less. That was a
Mm.
premium because I didn't go there to do it. It was already furnished. I took it over, so there was obviously a bit of a premium. If you go there and pick up all the furniture yourself and everything, you'll save a few bucks, but it takes your time. So then what's
Yeah,
that
for
worth?
sure.
2 weeks of your time, you got to fly down, you got to, and I got other businesses to run. So to
You
me, it
got
was
three
worth
kids
it.
as well. That's
Yeah, I got three little
yeah.
kids, so it was time. To me, it was worth it to pay a little premium to get through the door. So it was 27K to get it. That was first, last, and deposit,
Mhm.
plus all my furniture, plus some things I added right before
Like
we kind of went
sheets
live.
and bed stuff and
Yeah,
towels.
bed sheets, some art, some greenery. You
Oh
really want
yeah.
to try to make it look nice. Face towels. You need sponges. You need garbage bags. You need toilet paper,
Mm.
soap, all those kinds of things. I've created a little bit of a checklist
And who takes
to
these pictures of these places?
professional photographers, just local professional
Okay.
photographers send them in, and yeah, just like you would a real estate listing, same thing. That's
Good.
why this business was made a lot of sense to me because it essentially you're going in, you're staging a property, you're having it photographed, and you're listing it on the market. It's what I do for a living. I do this already,
It's
so
not
I
a far
just I could
stretch.
I can do that. I can do this. Yeah, all right. But you got to find local people. That's the key.
Yeah, yeah. So
Yeah,
so Dallas, Florida. What
yeah.
other good areas you feel are in the works? Or are you going to be concentrating all on these areas?
Um, right now, I'm probably not going to be venturing to too many different areas. because it is, you got to find new team members. It
Yeah.
ends up taking a lot more time getting yourself set up in the area. Um, but as far as there's lots of other good areas. So the Carolinas are huge. Pittsburgh, actually, oddly enough, a lot of people making money
Strange.
there. Yeah. Houston, Texas. Um, yeah, I said North Carolina specifically. Asheville, North Carolina. They're heavily regulated now because it was so popular with Airbnbs. Phoenix, Arizona is huge, but then you have to worry about some saturation. But if you do like anything, if you can get in there, you just got to step your game up. You can't go in and just throw any old
Go do
house on
your
the market.
research.
And
Do your due
you got to do your
diligence.
research.
That
Yeah,
takes a while, and you do most of it with DNA.
AirDNA is a helpful tool for sure.
Yeah.
Rabu is another one, and it helps you kind of just pull comps and give you some breakdown of what a 4 bedroom in this area. And you can, just like running real estate comps, you can kind of draw a circle around yourself and see what your competitors are doing in the area,
Hmm.
and run some numbers from there.
So what I'm impressed with is also you've been doing this for about a year. You've got
Yep,
8 units at the moment, and you're aiming for
correct.
another potentially 15 or 20, or
Yeah, so the goal is to, I like to shoot for the stars. So
of
the goal is to
course,
get to 50 units. That's where I'm trying to get to.
yeah,
I know people that have hundreds of units, so it's very doable. I've seen people do it. I've met them in person. They're real.
really,
And yeah, so I've got a buddy of mine who's got 36 units in Texas, and he was net 60K last month from all of his units. So
wow,
I've got 8 units. I've got 2 more under contract in a new building that's being built in Florida. That'll be ready in June. But now I'm trying to be a bit more strategic, because what I was shocked at is there is a ton of deals. Like, there's a ton of opportunity out there.
Mhm.
They're like I said, Omaha. Once people get the word about it, plus between companies and online, and US is a big place, right, with a
It
lot of
is.
people and a lot of homes. So it's almost overwhelming where you can go, and how do you narrow it down. So now that I've got myself in these couple of cities, I'm going to try to focus on them. But it's just about trying to drink from a fire hose, because it's got so much coming
Yeah,
at you. So it's I think it's a good problem to have.
it is very exciting.
Yeah.
So a couple of questions just to sum it up here. The VA. Tell me more about the VA's responsibility, how you found the VA, and how you train them, because that's also very important.
Yeah, absolutely. So the VA I found from an online website that you literally post jobs on. Upwork's one of
Philippines?
them
Is
as
it the
well.
Philippines?
Yeah, it's the Philippines. Yeah, it's online.ph, I believe, is the
Yeah,
website.
onlinejobs.ph. Yeah,
Dot jobs.
heard of
Yeah,
it. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. And basically, you post a job ad. So I posted a job ad at first, didn't really know what I was looking for. I just kind of gave them an idea. This is what I needed help with. And then, oddly enough, what I found was some of them had experience in it.
Yeah.
So I got applicants that had worked for companies that had already done this. So I was like, oh, this is fantastic. She was teaching me things. She was like, oh, hey, this is how we did the system here. And I was like, oh, that's great. What a great idea. So, I mean, and they are, like, I can't stress them enough how important they are. I kind of dragged my heels on the first couple because I could do it myself kind of
Yeah.
guy, right? And then after a while, you realize you need some help. And if
So,
you
so at
want to
what point,
scale in
like,
this
what
business,
what do they do besides everything? Like you said, everything is a lot of it is automatic. So,
yeah,
what is it they deal with?
yeah. So my VA handles guest communication. So she
Mhm.
responds to all the guests and deals with it. And if she runs into something she can't answer or handle, she'll
Yeah.
come talk to me, and then we'll figure it out together. She talks to my cleaners, make sure that they're showing up and that they're
Mhm.
going to come today. She talks to my handyman. I set up a business Amazon account because you get some slightly better rates for ordering your supplies, and
Mhm.
I added her on as a team member. She can put my orders through for me to order my supplies.
Cool.
So the cleaners will notify her that things need to get replaced. She goes ahead and orders them. I give her the thumbs up, push the order through, and then she lets them know it's coming. And so
Is
she
she
does that.
working 24 hours a day? Like when are her hours? When did it start and end? How does that
Yeah.
work?
Yeah. So Philippines, they're the opposite. So it's like a night shift for her. And typically she works from like 9 to 5 is her usual
Yeah.
hours, but obviously guests message you at different times and on
Yeah.
the weekend. And she's great. How do I put this? So she's not working all 8 hours of the day, obviously,
Mm.
right? There's lulls in her day, and so for right now, I've got a really hungry go getter, and she answers on the weekends. She knows I'm growing the company.
Yeah.
Now, when I get past 10, 15 properties, I'll have to hire more of them. So the gentleman that I know that has a lot more units than me, he's got 3 of them, and they work 3 shifts. So they've got a morning, afternoon, and evening
Wow.
shift. right? And
Okay.
then so you're covered on all your bases, all your properties. Someone's getting answered at all times.
That's
But right now I
totally.
have the one, and she just kind of she works
It's
with me,
as if
right?
you're paying her a salary for the month.
Exactly,
But
exactly.
she's there
Yep.
for you. She understands there's a buildable relationship. She understands what, I think there's a give and take.
Yeah, absolutely. And I pitched it to her at the beginning of this is a growing company, and then I
Yeah.
want her to help me grow it, and maybe she can help train future VAs because I've got her creating SOPs throughout all of our processes,
Creating SOPs meaning what?
standard operating procedures.
Oh, yes,
So
yes, of course.
yeah, so she's just doing step by step. Here's how we put a claim into Airbnb because that's another big, huge part of it. You can put
Mhm.
claims into Airbnb. So how does she do that? And then record all that down. So then when the next VA comes on and they have a question, here,
Yeah.
you just pass that over
That's
and away
brilliant.
you go.
So not only did you start the procedures for her, she's now jumping on and elaborating those procedures and systems for the business.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
That's
Yeah,
awesome.
she's, yeah.
That's awesome. So one more question I have. What if anyone wants to invest with you on this? Because this seems like a growing business. It seems like it's profitable. There's cash flow. Are there
Yep.
rooms for investors?
Yes, and that is where I'm at that stage now where you run your own capital as far as you can, and then
Mhm.
I'm kind of, and like I said, I got more deals than I can handle. So I am in the works of trying to figure out how all of that looks. It's early in that phase, but I've spoken to my accountant, and I basically have to set up a separate avenue for it, but it's absolutely doable. There's no reason it
Great.
can't
So
can't do that.
if anyone wants to reach out to you, how do they go out? How do they reach to you?
I mean, I don't know if I sent you my email address, but I have my email. Anybody
Yeah.
can. They can call my phone number too. So I don't know if you want to put it in your notes or how you
Yeah,
want
I
me to
called your
do that.
cell. Easy to get a hold of you. Very easy.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Very, very easily to get a hold of me. Send me an email, shoot me a call or DM on social media as well. I've got an account set up just for the Airbnb stuff. So hit me on any of those platforms and I'll get back to you
Cool.
for sure.
One thing I liked about your presentation is how you ended it, which was very optimistic and motivating because you said, if I can do it, you can as well. And you don't hear that too often. That's amazing.
Yeah, yeah. It's this. I'm not that I don't think I'm a special guy, but I think this is something that anybody can do. It's quite attainable. For me, it was a mental. Once I got my mind around the fact that I could operate in another country, because
Yeah.
I had kind of just shut the door to even thinking that was a possibility. Once I realized that that was a possibility, and then I saw the ability to systemize this and scale it, and then if you get a couple of good team members on it, I mean, there's no reason anybody couldn't do this.
So what is your superpower? Because you've got several businesses along the way. What is your superpower with all this?
One thing I've kind of learned as I've gotten older and made a lot of mistakes is one, you have to be able to delegate. You can't do it all
Mm.
yourself. You need a good team around you. So the fact that my cannabis shops that I own really taught me that
Mhm.
because I went from real estate, which was very self kind of driven,
Yeah.
and you were the main star of the show. And then the cannabis shops, I needed a team. We have a great manager. We have a great staff in place. That's how I'm able to step back from that. And I started that business saying, look, I have a real estate business I'm working. I can't be here working this store. So I
Mhm.
had that when I started the business that I needed to be able to have a team, somebody to be able to run this where I wasn't doing it. So then that mentality kind of transferred over to the so if I had a superpower, it's just simply being able to delegate and let quality people do their job and help you build proper companies.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And I like how you bring it back to the mindset. You basically shut it down. You didn't believe it was possible, but the fact that you just opened it up, you said, yeah, this is I can do this. Meeting other people who can do it as well is very promising. And I'm so glad it's all working out for you.
Yeah, no, thank you, Renee. I really appreciate you inviting me on, and it really is all it's been a ride, it's been a journey, but it's been a lot of fun, and I hope my story can maybe just inspire some other people to go out there and get after it, right? Because there's lots of opportunity for everybody.
Great. Thank you very much, Drew. Thank you. We'll talk
No
again.
problem.
Thanks.
Awesome.
Bye.
Bye, Renee.